Welcome to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson, show number 722. We're going to be talking today about a lot of stuff dealing with summer. I think you're going to enjoy the show. I know I have a whole lot of fun putting it together and talking with our guests. Today we will be talking with a few different ones. We'll be talking about some summer camps here, what Bunk One is doing to help summer camps. IO Gear is going to join us, talking about gear, power, media share. TrackDot, their luggage tracking, new product, very cool product if you travel, something you might want to look into. We'll be speaking with Quest today, some learning challenges for kids. Keep those minds active during the summertime. You know, we have so many times when the kids just slide back. In fact, that's the term the schools use. So we'll be talking about how to prevent that in your kids today. Ping MD is going to be with us. We'll have the doctor from there that started the whole thing, Gopal Chopra. And we're going to talk about healthcare, some other options you might want to consider. Because Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, is anything but affordable. And it looks like you just might not get the care you need either. So we'll talk about what they're able to do in order to help you get the care you need at a good price. Do you remember? This is very, very cool. The founder, Michael Gitter of Do You Remember, is about my age. And it's kind of fun to talk to him and look at the website. Go to doyouremember.com. There's stuff for older people, younger people, and boy, does it bring back memories. It's very, very cool. It's nostalgia-based. It's an interactive website. Kadobi is going to join us. All video content for kids. They have free stuff that your kids can watch. You know it's all been audited. It's been gone through by professional teachers and educators to make sure that it's good, it's legitimate. But the other nice thing about it is that they have a paid side that is going to help your kids learn all kinds of interesting things as well. We'll talk about Pango USA. Now, Pango is huge in a few foreign countries, Israel being one of them, and it replaces the parking meters. It replaces the kiosks that we have in some of our cities, including Manchester, New Hampshire, and Boston, where you go and you pay at one of these little kiosks. You then have to take the slip back to your car. This does it all on your smartphone. Very, very cool and a big money saver. We should probably take this to the mayor and see if he can do something. But we just put in Manchester a whole bunch of these kiosks. So a lot of money spent there that apparently didn't need to be spent. That's what Pango's all about. Intel's going to join us, talking about when you should upgrade a computer. And we're going to specifically talk with the director of their Ultrabook division. And if you're not familiar with that, if you're familiar with the Apple MacBook Air, that really nice little laptop, that's what we're talking about. These Ultrabooks are teeny little thin laptops that get a lot of hours and work really, really well. So we'll be talking to Intel about that. Webflakes is going to join us, talking about international blog content and how you can bring it into your life and do it in a way that you can understand. And this is kind of cool because if you might be interested in some stuff from France, from Italy, from Germany, if you like BMWs or Mercedes or other sports cars, they go ahead and pull it all together with Webflakes. And not only do they pull it together, but it's all translated and they show you the most popular articles on the subject matter you care about. So we'll be talking with Nathan a little bit about that today too. So that's our show. It's going to be a busy show per usual. Then we're going to have next week some more summer stuff and probably the week after too. And then it's probably not too far out from back to school. That's coming up too. Isn't it scary? Summer's drawing to an end. Nay, it has barely begun. I want to remind everyone that we're going to go through some articles in the news this week. Then we'll get to the interview section of today's show. But I get these articles based on feedback from you. So if you follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, YouTube, you can get some input here. Participate in the show via social media. Go to craigradio.com and I post a few articles every day that I think are of interest. And you look at those articles. If you forward them, if you like them, if you retweet them, then I know about that. And the most popular articles we talk about right here on the show. So it should be kind of fun. And sometimes a little slow. Good time to get my attention on any of these social media sites because we don't get as much. I probably only get a few a day during the summertime. I should also point out that more recently I've been tweeting during the show. So if you have questions, comments about the guests, you can go ahead and send me a tweet there at Craig Peterson. And right then and there, we can have a little conversation and have a conversation with other listeners on Twitter. How's that for social media? So do that during the show, of course, 4 to 7 on Sundays and during the week as well. CraigRadio.com is where you'll find the link to my Twitter and Facebook and everything else. And if you are also interested, you can see my desktop. You can see the articles that I review on my desktop. If you go to YouTube, just again, go to CraigRadio.com and click on the YouTube link. You'll see my channel and you can read along. You can see what I do. You can see how I put the show together. You can see where I record the show. Here in my little cube and all the mess that's around me here. And quit complaining about it, okay? I know. You're listening to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson. We're going to go through some articles in the news this week that include a great article by Paul Graham on do things that don't scale. He's a big investor, a VC guy. So why does he tell people who are starting businesses to start businesses that don't scale? So we'll talk about that. Interesting article. New news media guidelines from the White House. We're going to talk about what Eric Holder's up to now. And it looks like, yes, indeed, we now have an official press. For a couple of different reasons. Yes, just like former Soviet Union. So we'll talk about that. PC World, of course, their last magazine on the stands. Talk about that. PC industry is imploding. It was down to 12% last quarter. We'll talk about what's happening this quarter. If we have a chance, I'm going to get into intellectual property a little bit. One of the things I do is I provide expert testimony in patent trials because I've been doing technology for so long, 30 years now, and have used so much of it, I can find technologies that fit, that invalidate patents and stuff. So a very interesting article from a Nobel Prize-winning economist, Joseph Stiglitz. So we'll talk about what he's saying. Hey, you thought you were a little worried about being tracked by those wonderful little cards, you get from the grocery store that you can use to get discounts, and then they know what you're buying, and they try and get you to buy other things. Well, guess what, shoppers? Your cell phone's being used against you. Great quote from Seth Godin, and we might get to the psychology of workout music. I don't know. We're halfway through our first segment here. So let's start with this one. This, again, you can see it on my screen if you're watching on YouTube. This is from Paul Graham's own blog site. He has some phenomenal stuff, by the way. And he's one of the guys who runs the Y-Combinator, which is a company that provides funds for startups. Just putting it rather loosely here. But he's talking about what you have to do as the founder of a company. And anybody who's starting a company should read this article. I posted it on Twitter. You'll see it on my Twitter feed from earlier in the week this week. I had a few people that liked this, that clicked on the links, followed through, read the article. And I'll read a couple of real quick sections here. He says startups take off because the founders make them take off. There may be a handful that just grew by themselves, but usually it takes some sort of push to get them going. A good metaphor would be the cranks that a car engines had before they got electric starters. Once the engine's going, it'll keep going, but it's a very separate and laborious process to get it going. So he talks about the things you have to do. You have to recruit. You have to find the right people who are out there. You have to really pound the pavement. He talks about growth. If you want ideal growth, you're talking about 10% a month and 10% a week if you can do it of growth. So if you have 10 customers, try and get one more customer. And then if you have 100, try and get 10 more customers. So the 10% growth factor is a very good one. He's talking about how fragile some of the startups really are. Airbnb, for instance, if you're not familiar with them, great little site. It lets people put their apartments or their homes on a website, and people can rent them kind of like they'd rent a hotel room. And boy, have they had some problems here. New York City banned them. The whole state of New York and some other places too. So he's talking about that. He's talking about delighting users, which we'll get to our Seth Godin quote here in a couple of minutes. And talking about founders focusing on individual customers. Now, normally in a business, you don't look at an individual customer, they're just a number. But if you're a founder and you're trying to grow a business, everybody's important. You've got to get out there. You've got to visit the customers. You got to make sure that they're happy. And you got to go out of your way to make them happy, if that's what it takes. And experience, fighting fires. He talks about Meraki systems. That's a actual platform that we sell at Mainstream, and it ties in with Cisco. Cisco just bought them, but he talks about Meraki and how they got started as a hardware startup where the guys, the founders, actually assembled all of their devices, all of their Meraki devices to begin with here, because who could afford a $100,000 production run or even more? So it talks about consulting and growing big. He's got a lot of great stuff in there. Paul Graham, paulgraham.com. And again, on my Twitter feed, twitter.com/Craig Peterson. You can see it there. Boy, we're running out of time. Listening to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson. Just a few more minutes here, a couple more articles, and we'll get into the interview section of today's show, all about summertime. This one, if you want to talk about the scary department, this is from boingboing.net, a little article that was written, and it was talking about the new news media guidelines that were released last Friday by U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder. This is really scary. It says the changes that were laid out in the new policy, some of which are good, some of which are obviously flawed, applies only to members of the news media. They repeat over and over and over and over, news media. I'm not sure they once uttered the word journalist or reporter. So according to the DOJ's Domestic Investigation Operations Guide, a whole slew of journalists are not included in their definition of news media. Basically what they're saying is, if you're with CBS, NBC, PBS, or ABC, you're news media, or the New York Times. If you're with Fox News, you're a blogger, you're a radio show guy, you're probably not news media. So they get to tell you in the Justice Department what you can say and what you can't say. How's that for an introduction to Pravda and the, of course, wonderful Soviet Union? This is scary because this means that we are losing the independence of journalists out there. This week, speaking of journalists, the PC World magazine ended. Well, as a magazine, their last edition on the stands. It's the end of the era of computer magazines, of the general purpose magazines. They're completely online now. They got a lot of good stuff, but oh my goodness, PC World is gone. The last issue here. It's kind of crazy. A lot of guys worked for it. There's a great picture here of Bill Gates with PC World editors, and boy, does everybody look young there. It's back in 1983, he's talking about MS-DOS 2.0. Wow, what a change, eh? Next one is the PC industry. It's continuing to implode. I mentioned that the last quarter here, the second quarter of this year, sales were down 10.9% according to Gartner. Isn't that bad? The first quarter of this year, PC sales were down 11.2% on a year-over-year basis. So we're talking about some big hits here for some of the manufacturers. PC sales fell 11.2%, but Microsoft Windows business didn't shrink, and that's probably because Windows is counting their tablet sales, Microsoft is, as Windows sales. And of course, their tablets are doing terribly. Another big announcement this week, Microsoft cut the price of their tablets yet again because nobody's buying them. I'm not going to get into this. I won't have time today about the Nobel-winning economist talking about intellectual property and some of the problems with it. Too bad. So you have to read it yourself, craigradio.com. Click on Twitter. You'll find it in my feed. Attention shoppers. The stores now are tracking your cell phone. You know, you walk into a store, if you have your Wi-Fi turned on, even if you're not connected to the store's network, they're tracking your phone's Wi-Fi signal because your phone's out there looking for Wi-Fi out there, and they'll respond saying, yeah, I got Wi-Fi. and not that you have to connect to their network. So Nordstrom was one of the first ones to do this, and they did track shoppers. They want to know where they're going in the store, what they're doing in the store. It's basically what the online stores have been doing for years. Nordstrom put a sign up letting shoppers know, hey, listen, we're tracking you as you walk through the store. People didn't like it. They took it down, but expect this to happen more and more in the future. I want to get to our little quote here really quick from Seth Godin. Instead of proving the skeptics wrong, delight the true believers. This is from Seth Godin's blog, great marketer. Here's the thing about proving skeptics wrong. They don't care. They won't learn. They will stay skeptics. The ones who said the airplane would never fly ignored the success of the White brothers, went on to become skeptical of something else. And when they got on an airplane, they didn't apologize to the engineers on the way in. Stick around. Summertime right here on Tech Talk with Craig Peterson. We'll be right back. Damn, that goes fast.